Alright guys, Brian with VetteSource back in the garage today, looking at our cylinder head, which is now ready for reinstallation on our Formula 350 tune port injection teardown that turned into a host of other things that we needed to take care of. So as you can see, we've got our block surface clean here, our head surface I should say. We've got our block surface prepped outside. So what I'm going to do real quick here is one other little bit of housekeeping that we need to do is one thing you'll notice when you tear into these is your bolts tend to be dirty and nasty and filthy, a lot of times even from just the sealant, the coolant, the sealant that gets put on them so they don't leak coolant, because some of these bolts locations actually go through water jackets, so you don't want the water coming out. So what we're going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and use a tap and a die set to clean these out. Now if you've never used one of these before, these are a good investment to have if you're going to be mechanicking. Again, it's better to clean your bolt threads out first, and your bolts and your threads first, so that you get your proper torque values, because without cleaning them out, you've got trash inside there and your torque values are going to actually be off. And it actually tells you this in the service manuals, but a lot of times if you're not working with a service manual, it's an easy step to overlook. So a tap and die set basically is just a cleaner, thread cleaner. Okay, so of course on this side, these are your taps, right? And what these do is you thread these down into your bolt hole locations and they clean out the threads, right? The dies are the ones that you actually run down over the bolts to clean them out. And of course with the tap and die set, this is just an old Craftsman set I have, but they're very well done. These were, I think, made in Germany, so this is an older set that I've had for a while. But you've got several tools that come with this to be able to tell which bolts you're using. Now, bolts are basically measured two different ways. You've got the size, circumference, which in standard size will be 3/8, 7/16, that kind of stuff. And then you've got the pitch, or the amount of threads per inch. Now on these bolts here, these happen to be 7/16. I'm sorry, not 7/16. 3/8 by, let me show you on the tool here, 16 threads per inch. See that? I just use that little tool to be able to match it up. And then that will help you identify the proper thread cutting tool that you want, because if you use the wrong one, you'll mess up the threads inside. So what I'm going to do is just position the camera here, and I'm going to try a new feature today that this camera has, if I can make it work. Excuse me. And I'm going to go in and use the time warp just while I go through this, simply because it's not something you probably want to see me do to every single one of them. Now I'll start the first one and show you guys how to do this first one here. So basically, to run this through, you're just going to put this tool together, which is basically your driver tool, and you can actually take one side or the other off. And we're just going to squirt a little bit of penetrating fluid down in there, and then we're just going to run the tap right down inside of it. Okay, now all I'm doing is these are cut just a little bit of it a bevel, so that what they'll do is clean these threads as you run it down through there. And you can see this one wasn't real bad. What we'll do is we'll pull it back out, and you can run it down to the stop, but if you start to feel heavy resistance, or if you feel something that doesn't feel right, stop and check your measurements again, because you don't want to mess the threads up, especially when you're dealing with aluminum components. And when I pull this back out, you can see all the trash and such that came out of that. So that's why that's actually a good thing to do. And then of course, every time you use this, you're going to want to clean it back off again before you run it through the next one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch this over to the time warp just to get through this, so you guys don't have to sit through 20 minutes of me doing this, and we'll see how this works out for the video. Again, I'm just testing stuff out because it's a new camera, so bear with me here. Okay, that wraps up our time warp part of the video. Like I said, you guys can let me know how that worked out, if it worked out or not, and we'll see from there. Now what we're going to do is we'll go outside and we'll go ahead and use the tap for the cylinder head bolts. If I can find my tap right there. That would be a 14 threads per inch, 3/8. And we'll do that next, and then we'll go ahead and put the cylinder head back on the car again, and we'll go through the steps for that. So hang tight, let me get repositioned with all my equipment, and we'll be back outside in a second. Hold on. Okay guys, we're back out here at the car again. We're ready to finish the prep work on this edge here as we get the cylinder head back on. So what we're going to do is pull off our protective towels we've had there, and you can see I've mostly got this prepped for reinstallation. All we're going to do now is clean out our head bolt locations, so these will go in with the proper torque value. And of course, for each head there are 17 bolts that go into this thing. So, you know, of course, bigger bolts, and a lot of them are required to contain that cylinder pressure as these things are running. And of course, what I'll do too is a final cleanup of the cylinder bores before I put everything back together again. But you can kind of see, looking here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 along the bottom, and we've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 bolts that hold this whole cylinder head and locate into position. So I'm going to get set up here. We're going to clean this out on the deck surface, make sure everything's good to go before I put everything back together, and I'll be right back with you guys. Stand by, I'll be back soon. Alright guys, back with our tools and our setup so that we can go ahead and run the tap through these 17 holes here to get our cylinder head bolts back on. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of a lubricant in each one of these, get them more receptive to tap. And once I'm set up, we will time warp our way through here so that you guys don't have to watch 30 minutes of me running these taps through here. Alright, so we got those in. I'm gonna go ahead and get set up and switch this over to time warp mode. So like I said, I'm experimenting today, bear with me. You guys can give me feedback on whether or not you like that, so we'll go from there. All right, hang tight. All right, that gives us our cleanup of the head bolts. So we've got that done and performed. Now what I'm gonna do for the next couple minutes is make sure that my head surface, block surface, is completely clean. I got a few more areas I'm gonna need to spot clean in here, and make sure my cylinders don't have any trash in them before I get started. And I may end up working on the edge of this lifter valley right here, we'll see. And then when I come back, we're gonna go ahead and place the the head gasket, and then put the head back on, and then we'll be ready to install our bolts. So give me a few minutes guys, I'll be right back. Okay guys, we're back with the final prep done on our cylinder head surface to get this thing done. Now one thing I do want to mention along the way as I've been doing this is, obviously you've seen I've kind of just done this in the driveway without worrying about going to the machine shop. Now that's fine, but one thing you got to consider is the biggest thing to do in these jobs is to make sure cleanliness. Cleanliness is like 80 to 90%, I'd say 90% of it. The reassembly, the disassembly is not nearly as challenging. Now, I did this quickly. This is an iron block and iron heads, right? Unlike the Corvette TPIs, so I can get away with a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for, shade tree mechanicking kind of stuff here. But we'll see how this works out. You can see that even though I got this really clean, I don't have any fingernail catching, but this isn't as smooth as I like it, just because I had to get a lot of material, a lot of it, especially that darn liquid gasket sealer they use in this, made a mess of this. So I'll give you an insight here, just a tip. You know, you've got what they call in the business, it's called a roughness appearance, right? Now on cylinder heads and the decks, you've got a certain number of roughness appearance RA that they're allowed to have. Now in a small block Chevy, where you've got an iron block and iron heads, manufacturers, you're allowed 60, upwards of 80 to 100. The range 60 to 100, right? Which equates to a certain micron level. And you can see here, even though I can see my sanding marks where I used basically my, not DA, but I used my quick tool to get the gasket material off of here. I don't have anywhere where my fingernails are catching, but the surface is just not as smooth as I'd like it. Now we're gonna see what happens. Obviously this is not a daily driver, and worst case scenario, if she doesn't like to seal or doesn't want to seal up, and the reason why I'm talking about the roughness appearance is little minute imperfections in the deck surfaces can actually cause problems with sealing with these new multi-layer gaskets they make, because they're steel compressed between two pieces of composite, and they actually float in there, and when they're not floating correctly or they catch up on something, then it can make problems with sealing. So with that being said, I'm just letting you know, kind of what I did here was just off the cuff without pulling this thing apart completely, taking it out of here. But we'll see in the future. This car is not going anywhere, so you guys can journey with me to see how this works on our shade tree mechanic kind of job we did here. So what we're gonna do first, let me grab the gasket. And first things first, we're gonna go ahead and install the gasket. Now of course, I went ahead and hit this with an extra layer of carb cleaner on the deck and wiped it clean and dry. And then I squirted just a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil inside of each cylinder, just to kind of get it moisture inside of there. Coated the cylinder walls with it, just so it doesn't stay dry while we finish up the other side. So all I'm gonna do, now the other thing too that's cool about a small block Chevy with a V8, I think the other manufacturers have them too, is they've got these locator dowel pins, okay? So these actually allow you to set the gasket down and the cylinder head on top without it falling off. And of course on the gasket itself, it actually shows you right hand on the gasket, so you know which direction you're supposed to put your gasket on. So all we're gonna do is push that straight down there. We got that one located on that there. I'm gonna carefully put it down on our tabs, our dowel pins. Okay, and that's on. Now you can see I've got my bolts over here ready to go. We've got 17 bolts. So what I'm gonna do real quick, while the camera's positioned here, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this cylinder head in. So give me a second to pick this thing up. Okay, we're gonna get the cylinder head in here, hopefully without dropping the camera, and get it positioned correctly, hopefully. There's one side. And there's the other side. Okay. All right, that's all there was to it. Now, public service announcement for you guys. As my camera drops, let's make sure that's... Don't leave your head in the garage and then walk into the garage and leave it standing on its end with no shoes on and drop the cylinder head on the corner of your foot and crush it. So even though these aren't as heavy as big block heads, They are heavier than aluminum heads, and they will break stuff in your foot. I can attest to that, because I do have some things that are not quite right in my foot now, but we'll see how it comes out. So, first things first, all you're gonna do essentially here is we're gonna hand feed these in, our bolts. These are just 13mm. Now the one thing, if these are not coated from your manufacturer, you're going to want to coat these with sealant. I know I've said this a couple times already, but they do go through the water jackets. So you're going to want to make sure that those are coated so they're not leaking any water. It looks like my position of my camera is moving because of where I have it here. And you're just going to want to get these started by hand in here to get those in. Now in small box Chevy heads, there's actually a range that you can go from. I think in the service manual it was telling me, I want to say it said all the way from 45 or 50 to 75, which sounds right in my mind, but what I like to do is torque these down in stages. And I can see I'm going to move this camera position in a second since I've got movement here. So let's move here. Let's see. And I think let's see. I think we can see just about the same as we were before, so that's good. Now, of your 17 bolts, 2 of them are going to be a little bit shorter. Those are going to go in your end locations here, because they're actually a little bit lower down in the head. The boss is not as high on those. And then for these last 7, they're just simply going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so for now, what I'm going to do is just kind of get them started a little bit further in. Actually, I don't even need that. All I got to do is come in a little bit until they catch where that sealant is. Okay, that's nobody getting killed. That's just the 2-year-old across the street playing in her pool. There's that one. There's that one. There's that one. And our little hidden one back in this corner. Okay. And what I realized I forgot was my bolt tighten sequence chart, because you want to tighten these in a certain sequence. This one is actually quite important, and with 17 of them I just don't quite remember. They start in the middle and work our way out. So I'm going to run in the house, grab my bolt tighten sequence chart, and I'll be right back. Okay, back again. I actually misspoke. Our cylinder heads are from 60 to 75. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and start myself out with our good old-fashioned torque wrench here at 50 and work our way up to 70 and see how things look. Let's see where we're at. A couple more turns will get me. Probably should have done this off camera first. to 50. Okay, we're at 50. Okay, all right. And of course, here is our bolt tightening sequence. So we're going to start with number 1 right here in the center, and then go 2, and then 3, 4, and work our way out. Okay, so we've got number 1 in the center, and we're going to just work our way up to 50 pounds here. I may not get that far with it. We'll see how it goes. Don't hit the windshield. In fact, what I'm going to do is get these up to our... Okay. All right, there's that one there. Okay. Let's go ahead and get number 2 into place. What we'll do, for simplicity's sake, we'll go ahead and use our fixed socket here to get this down to where it needs to go. Okay, there's number 2. Number 3 will be right here. Number 3. There's number 4. And here's number 5. And here's number 6. Here's number 7. Here's number 8. And of course, if you're looking at this, you see I'm kind of working in a counterclock or a clockwise circle, I should say, more or less. Let me make sure my camera's in the right spot here, guys. If I could shift it a little bit. There's number 8, number 9, and number 10. Here's number 11. Almost there. 11. And then we're going to go over to here. There's 12. Here's 13. And then 14, we're going to jump back over here. Trying not to hit the car. And 15. And then 16. And number 17, all the way in the front. Now that was just to get them snug, okay? So at this point, I've got to go through and make 51 more tightens in increments from 50 to 70. Actually, more than that, probably closer to 70. So I'm going to show you my first one if you've never seen this done before. So all we're doing with the torque wrench is we're getting this out to our first stage of tightness, and what you'll feel when the torque wrench gets to its level, hear that click, That's 50 foot-pounds of torque right there. Okay, our second one. There's the second one at 50 pounds. Here's our, oops, almost made a mistake there, guys. Here's our third one. All right, so third one, and there's our fourth one. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of these with you because it will take quite a while, but you see basically how we've got this cylinder head back on here again and how it's put in here. So we're in good shape. Now this other side I'm not going to do here on camera because it's just a mirror image of what I've done, all the work I've done on this side. And I appreciate you guys if you've watched through the whole series on this side. So since I'm on camera, I'll be able to get this done pretty lickety split, and I'll upload that next week or the week after once I get everything done. So that's gonna wrap things up today. I appreciate you sticking out, hanging out. This video probably turned out a little bit longer even than I wanted to, but make sure you comment about that time warp that I tried in there. Tell me if you think that works or not, and we'll check you out next time. Okay guys, thanks again.